Hey, I want to share with you an example of an integration. So, if we think about what's possible with these digital operating systems as we build them, you need to start at the organizing everything and getting a really clear system down. But once you have that in place, then it's possible to connect your Notion world with most other services on the internet using APIs. Now, it sounds a little nerdy and does tend to get a little bit technical. There are steps between there. Sometimes Notion will have a direct integration with a platform that makes it really easy. But if you want to do things that are quite advanced, that's also possible. And so I want to give you an example today of an integration between Xero, the accounting platform, and Notion. And I've been working with a client for a while, and they have a pretty sophisticated setup. They actually have 3 different instances of Xero, but importantly, they have, their contacts, their company's contacts. And so we really want to have only one source of truth for that information. We don't want multiple copies of contacts. We don't want to have to keep them organized and in sync. So what we've done is we've linked our Notion contacts databases with each of those Xero contact databases, and Notion is the source of truth. And so it writes down to those Xero contacts exactly what it wants the contacts to be, which means there's only one place to keep that information up to date. So let me just walk you through briefly how the automations run. We won't look at the Notion end because it is literally just a contacts database. But here in make.com, we're doing a couple of things. Now, it's pretty much the same for both the company database and the contacts database. But I guess one of the things that can make this a bit more complex is in Notion, we tend to store a company record and people records in separate databases. If you had them in the same database, it would be simpler. But we've got a company database that needs to sync and a contacts one that does. So you can see here, I have a view and an automation that runs that searches for records in Notion that need a record in Xero. Now that's either, you could make that for a bunch of reasons. You could just make it like if they don't have one already, please go and get it. And so you can see here, this searches for it, finds the record. Part of finding the record is it works out where its contact needs to be made. Again, a level of complexity that you wouldn't have to have, but it's pretty simple. If it doesn't have a contact in Xero, in Notion, there's a property that stores the Xero contact ID. If that's empty, then it says, great, let's go and create one. It goes into Xero and it creates that contacting Xero, and then it just writes back to Notion and says, this is the contact ID. So it's pretty straightforward. Then what we've got is another scenario, make scenario. And what that does is it keeps an eye on the Notion database, the contacts database. And when there are changes in the contacts database, then it takes that record and writes it over the top or updates the Xero one. So again, pretty straightforward, really. We're just saying, take the Notion information if it's changed and make sure that Xero is up to date. Now, the good thing about this is that in Xero, we get this continuous experience where it's the same contact. And so when transactions are reconciled against it or invoices are made for it or whatever, you see that information over time. But we store this contact information that we use for a whole bunch of other things in our digital operating system in Notion. And that information is what Xero gets updated with. Now, how you implement this for yourself, going to be slightly different for everyone based on the nuances of your workflows and your system. But as you can see, it is possible to have one central contacts list and keep it in sync between Notion and a tool like Xero.